And joining me right now, ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only Dick Morris, Newsmax TV political analyst and author of Armageddon, How Trump Can Beat Hillary. There it is on the screen. And Dick, again, I mentioned this the day after the election, that you called it. You were right on target. So congratulations on all the success.
I was saying that at times I thought that I would have to retitle it How Trump Could Have Beaten Hillary, but glad the title worked as is.
Yes, I'm very glad as well. All right, let's talk a little bit about the transition. It started to gain traction in the media with throwing Christie overboard and replacing him with Mike Pence for the heading up of the transition team. And there was speculation as to why that might have happened. There's a whole bunch of speculation today that it might have happened in part because Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law's father, was prosecuted and put in jail by then-prosecutor Chris Christie. Do you think that plays a big role in it?
I think it does. I think there's always been bad blood there, and I think that's coming to the surface. But I think the deeper issue, there are two deeper issues. One is it really shows that Trump is going to use Pence as kind of his assistant president, as a vice president should be. And I think that's great, and I think it really is an important signal. Second, and also, with Cheney, we learned that if you're directing the transition, you put your people throughout the administration, and that gives you a real capacity to run things while you're president or while you're vice president, because you can always reach out to a department and you're going to find your people who you help put in there. So I think that's one element. But the other element that's even more encouraging is that he's really not hesitant to get rid of the power structure and replace it. Mike Rogers, who he threw out, Pence threw out, is especially pernicious. Rogers was the chairman of the House Intel Committee, Pete Hoekstra's successor. We have Hoekstra on the network often.
Sure.
And Rogers opposed the appointment of a special committee to investigate Benghazi. He said it wasn't necessary. His committee could do all the investigating they needed. And after 2 years of refusing, with massive public demand, including from Newsmax, the result was that they relented and appointed Trey Gowdy chairman of a special committee. Now, that committee was the only way we knew to find out about Hillary's secret server.
Right.
It was in response to subpoenas from that committee, as well as from Judicial Watch and Citizens United, that we learned about her secret server. So they performed the same function, really, as the Watergate Committee discovering the Nixon tapes in the Nixon impeachment. And then it turned out the real reason Rogers opposed the Select Committee is his wife, Christie Rogers, was one of the heads of Aegis Defense Systems.
Who do you think is going to emerge in some of the top spots? I mean, we hear so much about Rudy Giuliani, Newt Gingrich, and some other obvious names, I guess. But nothing's happened really yet.
Yeah, it's hard to predict that. I think that my own personal opinion is that Rudy would be an excellent Secretary of State. I am concerned about the foreign lobbying stuff because it is too close to what Hillary did. As Attorney General, that would not be an issue, so maybe he might want to look there.
Yeah, interesting. All right, you know what I want to ask you about, Dick? I want to ask you two more topics. One is sanctuary cities. I saw a map recently, and there are we hear a lot about L.A. and New York City. There's about 13 thereabouts cities across the country that say that they will remain sanctuary cities. Now, I'm not a constitutional scholar, I'm not a lawyer, but I would imagine that if the federal government says you can't keep illegals. I mean, Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York City, who met with Trump today, there's a report that he's thinking of destroying a database that has illegals' names in it because they sought some service or the other. And he's afraid that the Trump administration will use that, and ICE will use that to get information on illegals. I mean, destroying a database, that almost sounds criminal.
Yeah, it sure does. And this all gets very close to nullification and secession in refusing to apply federal law. Remember, originally South Carolina said we will not enforce the tariff law, and that was the beginning of the movement towards secession. I think, let's be clear on what sanctuary cities involves. When there is an inmate in a state facility or a local jail who has served his time and is now being released, whether on parole or probation or simply at the end of his sentence, and he is an illegal immigrant, they usually call ICE in and say, we're releasing him at 9 o'clock in the morning. And at 8:50, they'll be there waiting at the jailhouse door. And as it's open, they will take the guy into custody and deport him, put him on a plane back to where he came from. Now, the sanctuary city says, I will not cooperate in that process. I will not tell you who we're releasing when, and I will not alert you to have your people there. Okay. Now and the Obama administration, that's just as happy to do that because they don't want to deport him, wasn't insisting on it. Now, if the current administration, the new one, insists on it and says, I want that list, I want those names, I assume that they could subpoena those names and get them. Or they could keep a guard permanently posted at the state facility, apprehending everybody that leaves and checking their status. I don't think the state could evict the federal officer. I don't think the state could prevent the federal officer from accessing the facility. I think that gets close to an illegal act, and our Constitution provides for federal supremacy. The other tool that could go on is that the president could announce that I'm going to withhold LEAA funds, Law Enforcement Act Assistance Funds, which provide funding for the police departments around the country. And they could say, we're going to withhold that money from any city that refuses to cooperate in the ICE process. That might be an easier way to do it, and then there would be cooperation forthcoming.
Yeah, because, I'm sorry, I was going to say the LAPD today specifically said that we are law enforcers, not deporters.
Yeah, right, and they're dependent on the LEA money to run their police departments. So one way or another, I'd bet on Trump getting his way.
Well, I hope you're right. Let me ask you, there were all kinds of reports. You know, we had Ed Klein on the day after the election who said that he was told that Hillary called a friend of hers at 6:30 in the morning the next morning, crying hysterically, blaming Comey and Obama for not reeling in Comey. And then subsequently, the campaign did officially blame Comey. So he might have been right on target with that. Then I see reports also, and, you know, Secret Service agents involved leaked this or that, that Hillary was uncontrollable, not only inconsolable, but uncontrollable, throwing things, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. You know them real well. You know her real well. What do you think went on as the night wore on and it became apparent she was the loser?
Yeah, I think that's very likely. Hillary frequently cries at times like that and gets furious, and she is prone to throwing things. I think that what's important is to understand that the Clintons never take the blame for anything. Everything is somebody else's fault. It's like a teenager describing why he didn't do his homework or why he cracked up the car. It is always somebody else's fault. And it's very easy in this situation to blame Comey. I was very impressed by a leak that I think was from Ed Klein, that a week before the election, Bill called Hillary, and he was in Little Rock at the Clinton Library, and said, you're blaming Comey for this. You're wrong. It's that your campaign staff is not listening to my advice and focusing on the economic pain of the forgotten American people.
Interesting, which is exactly what he said. Yeah, which is exactly what he said on the campaign trail. Dick, always got to go. Always great to talk to you, sir.
Thank
you very much. And folks, you can still get How Trump Can Beat Hillary, and you'll see a blueprint that was followed by Trump to beat Hillary. Tim Graham with the Media Research Center. He will be here next to discuss the media onslaught, and it is an onslaught against President-elect Trump and Steve Bannon, etc. Don't go away.